I caught my wife's secret plan to ruin me, so I ruined her first. The perfect marriage. Or so I thought. Betrayal never comes from an enemy. It comes from someone you trust completely. If someone had told me a year ago that my wife was secretly plotting to destroy me, I would have laughed in their face. Lisa was everything a man could want. Beautiful, charismatic, effortlessly charming. People gravitated toward her. She could walk into any room and command attention without even trying. And for 8 years, I thought I was the luckiest man alive to have her as my wife. I believed we had something solid. Sure, no marriage is perfect. We had our fair share of arguments. But I never once imagined that, behind my back, she was planning to leave me with absolutely nothing. I had no reason to be suspicious. No red flags. No drastic changes in her behavior. Lisa was just as affectionate as always, just as involved in our lives as she had always been. But looking back, I realize now that the best liars don't act suspiciously. They don't give you obvious warning signs. Instead, they keep everything exactly the same, right up until the moment they pull the rug out from under you. The first sign of trouble came completely by accident. I was going through some paperwork in my home office, sorting through bills and tax documents, when I found a locked drawer in my own desk. That alone was unusual. I never locked my drawers. Curiosity got the better of me, and since I kept a spare key in my safe, I opened it. Inside was a single blue folder, tucked away beneath old files. It was labeled in her handwriting, but when I pulled it out and flipped it open, my stomach dropped. Divorce papers. At first, I thought it had to be some kind of mistake. Maybe an old document from years ago that she had forgotten to throw away. But as I read through the contents, I realized that this wasn't just some idle draft. This was an active plan. Lisa had already consulted a lawyer. She had already opened separate bank accounts. She had already started quietly moving our shared assets, ensuring that, when the time came, I would be left with nothing. And the worst part? She had been documenting everything to make it look like I was the bad guy. There were carefully curated text message screenshots, taken out of context to make our minor arguments look like I was emotionally neglecting her. There were altered financial records, designed to make it seem like I was reckless with money. There were even fake accounts of verbal abuse, fabricated to turn any legal battle in her favor. Lisa wasn't just leaving me. She was setting me up to be ruined. I sat there in stunned silence, staring at the pages in my hands, my pulse hammering in my ears. The betrayal was overwhelming, suffocating. I had built my entire life around this woman, given her everything, and in return, she had been orchestrating my downfall behind my back. And then I saw his name, a man I didn't recognize, but one that appeared repeatedly throughout her financial statements. Hotel transactions, expensive dinners, flights, paid for with our money. Lisa wasn't just planning to leave me. She was funding her new life with another man while preparing to rip mine apart. Rage boiled in my veins, but I didn't let it take over. I didn't storm into the living room and confront her. I didn't call her out, demand answers, or yell, because in that moment, I realized something. I still had time. Lisa thought she was being smart. She thought she was setting the perfect trap, ensuring that I would be powerless by the time she finally filed for divorce. But what she didn't know, I had just discovered her plan before she could execute it, and that meant I had the upper hand. I took a deep breath, closed the folder, and carefully placed it back where I found it. I locked the drawer again, made sure everything looked untouched, and walked out of my office with a neutral expression. Lisa was on the couch, scrolling through her phone, a small smile on her lips. Probably texting him. Probably thinking about how easy it was going to be to ruin me. She looked up as I entered the room. "Something wrong?" she asked, completely unaware of what I had just found. I smiled. "No," I said. "Just a long day at work." And just like that, Lisa went back to her phone, not suspecting a thing. She thought she had everything under control. She had no idea that I had just decided to destroy her first. She thinks she's smart, but I'm smarter. Lisa thought she had everything under control. She thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers, setting up a perfect trap that would leave me financially ruined, legally defenseless, and emotionally broken. But what she didn't realize was that the second I discovered her plan, the game changed. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream, argue, or demand an explanation. That would have been exactly what she wanted. If I lost my temper, she'd use it as proof that I was unstable, dangerous, maybe even abusive. That would only make her case stronger when she finally pulled the trigger on her divorce scheme. So instead, I played the role of the oblivious, unsuspecting husband. I let her think she was still in control. I let her believe that she was winning. And while she was busy planning my downfall, I was tearing apart her entire strategy from the inside. Step 1. Securing my money. Lisa had already started moving our shared finances into her personal accounts, a slow bleed designed to make it seem like I had spent recklessly and mismanaged our assets. If I didn't act fast, by the time she filed for divorce, I'd have nothing left. So I did the same. Quietly, methodically, I started transferring my own assets into a separate account under a trust name she didn't know existed. I liquidated stocks, sold off small investments, and even took out cash in amounts small enough to avoid raising red flags. Every paycheck, every side income, every dollar I could secure vanished from our joint accounts before she had the chance to claim it. At the same time, I started reallocating ownership of my business. Lisa thought she was entitled to half of it, based on some bullshit reasoning about how she had supported me emotionally while I built it. But what she didn't realize was that my company wasn't just in my name. It took a few well-placed conversations, but within weeks, I had restructured the ownership to legally minimize any claim she could make. Lisa thought she was going to walk away with half of everything I owned. But by the time she was ready to make her move, there wouldn't be anything left for her to take. Step 2. Collecting evidence against her. Lisa had spent months carefully curating false evidence against me. She had messages, financial statements, and fabricated claims that would make me look like the irresponsible, emotionally neglectful husband. But she wasn't the only one who knew how to build a case. I started collecting my own evidence, real evidence. Heavy checkmark, I installed hidden cameras in the house. Not in places that would raise suspicion, but in the home office, the hallway, and even in the kitchen, places where she frequently took calls or sent messages. Heavy checkmark, I mirrored her phone. It was easier than she probably realized. One night, while she was in the shower, I accessed her cloud backups and linked them to a private account. Every message, every call, every transaction, now I had a copy. Heavy checkmark, I saved receipts. Every fraudulent transfer she made, every hotel booking under her name, every restaurant bill charged to our joint account, but used for another man. By the time I was done, I didn't just have proof of her affair. I had everything I needed to obliterate her in court. She had tried to build a case against me. I built a stronger case against her. Step 3. Destroying her reputation before she could destroy mine. Lisa thrived on appearances. She was a social butterfly, always curating the perfect image online and in real life. She needed people to believe she was the perfect wife, the loving partner trapped in a marriage with an ungrateful husband. But all it would take was a few cracks in her perfect image for that illusion to shatter. I started small. I casually mentioned to mutual friends that Lisa and I were going through a rough patch. I didn't say much, just enough to plant the seed. I let them connect the dots. Then, I leaked anonymous messages about her affair. Nothing direct, just small hints. Enough for the gossip to spread like wildfire. People love scandals, and Lisa was about to become one. By the time she was ready to file for divorce, her entire social circle would already know the truth. She thought she would be the victim in this story. Instead, she was becoming the villain. Step 4. Letting her think she was winning. The hardest part? Pretending I didn't know. I had to act like the clueless, loving husband. I had to kiss her goodnight, tell her I loved her, pretend I didn't see the way she smiled at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I had to let her believe that I was completely unaware while I was actually dismantling her life behind the scenes. And the best part? Lisa was so confident, so sure of her own brilliance, that she never even noticed how the tables were turning. She was walking straight into her own destruction. The day before the divorce papers arrived, Lisa had no idea that I already knew everything. She had no idea that I had drained our accounts, moved my assets, and prepared a legal case that would obliterate her in court. So, on the night before she planned to serve me with the divorce papers, she was unusually affectionate. She kissed me. She smiled at me. She laughed at my jokes. She played the role of the loving wife one last time. And I let her. I let her think she had won. Because tomorrow, she was going to wake up to the biggest shock of her life. The trap closes. She tries to destroy me, but ends up destroying herself. Lisa woke up the next morning thinking it was going to be the best day of her life. She had spent months preparing for this, setting the stage, curating fake evidence, ensuring that when she finally handed me those divorce papers, She would be in full control. She had no idea that today was going to be the worst day of her life. I was up before her, sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee like it was just another normal morning. I heard her footsteps coming down the stairs, light and confident. She was dressed impeccably, makeup flawless, because today she had a role to play. "Morning, babe," she said sweetly, leaning against the doorway. "Morning," I replied, keeping my face unreadable. She sat across from me, her fingers tapping against the counter. She was waiting for the perfect moment, the moment where she could watch my world collapse. "So," she started, voice dripping with fake concern, "I need to talk to you about something important." I set my coffee down, acting oblivious. "Oh," she slid the divorce papers across the table. "I've been thinking a lot about this," she continued, rehearsed and polished, "and I think it's time we go our separate ways. This isn't working anymore. I need to do what's best for me." I picked up the papers, flipping through them slowly, making sure she saw me reading every page. The financial breakdown? She was asking for everything. The false accusations? She had built a perfect sob story. The division of assets? I was meant to be left with scraps. I let out a small breath, acting like I was processing it. Lisa tilted her head, faking sympathy. "I know this is hard, but I think, deep down, you understand it's for the best." I looked up at her, met her eyes, and smiled. "Lisa," I said calmly, "I know about the affair. I know about the bank accounts. I know about the fake evidence you've been collecting. And I know you've been planning this for months." Her entire body froze. The color drained from her face. What?" she stammered, her confidence crumbling instantly. I pulled out my own folder and slid it across the table. "You've been busy, Lisa," I continued, my voice steady. "But so have I." She opened the folder with shaky hands, eyes scanning the contents. Heavy checkmark bank records showing her secret transfers. Heavy checkmark screenshots of her texts with her affair partner. Heavy checkmark surveillance footage of her meeting with her lawyer months ago. Heavy checkmark a full breakdown of every lie she had tried to build against me. By the time she finished reading, she was physically shaking. How did you get all of this?" she whispered. I leaned forward, my smile widening. "Because unlike you, Lisa, I don't just plan for the short term. I think ahead." She slammed the folder shut. "You can't use this against me. The court. The court." I cut her off, raising an eyebrow. "Lisa, everything in that folder is real. Unlike your fabricated sob story. And you know what happens when someone is caught lying in court." Her breathing was uneven now. She knew exactly what happened. "Perjury, Lisa. It's a crime." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I could see her mind racing. She had thought she was the mastermind. She thought she was untouchable. But now, she was realizing that she was trapped. The moment she realized she lost. Lisa wasn't a fighter. She was a manipulator. She thrived when she had control, when she could pull the strings and make people dance. But now, she was scrambling. "What do you want?" she finally asked, her voice small. I took another sip of my coffee, savoring the moment. "I want you to sign the divorce papers," I said, pulling a different set of documents from my bag. "But these are a little different from the ones you gave me." She picked them up hesitantly, flipping through the pages. Her hands started shaking again. "In this version?" Heavy check mark, she walked away with nothing. Heavy check mark, she forfeited all claims to my business, my savings, and my home. Heavy check mark, she acknowledged in writing that there was no abuse or neglect, killing any chance of using that against me later. "No," she whispered. "This isn't fair." I chuckled. "Fair? Lisa, you were about to leave me with nothing. You were going to make me look like a monster while you ran off with your new boyfriend. And now, you're upset that you have to face consequences." She clenched her jaw, still holding on to whatever scraps of defiance she had left. "And if I don't sign?" she challenged. I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Then we take it to court. And everything in that folder? Every text, every transaction, every piece of evidence I have, it becomes public record." Her eyes widened. Lisa cared about money. She cared about power. But more than anything, she cared about her reputation. And now, I had the power to destroy it completely. I could see the fight leaving her body. She had no options left. With a shaky breath, she grabbed a pen and signed. I watched her do it, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. She thought today was going to be her victory. Instead, it was the day I erased her from my life forever. The aftermath. What happened to Lisa after losing everything? Lisa walked out of that kitchen a completely different woman than the one who had walked in. When she first sat down at the table that morning, she was confident, arrogant, convinced that she was about to ruin me. But by the time she stood up, she looked like a ghost of herself. Shoulders slumped, hands trembling, eyes darting around, still searching for a way out that no longer existed. She had lost, and I made sure she knew it. She left without another word, probably too shocked to even try to manipulate me one last time. That was new for her. Lisa had always been a talker, always knew how to twist a situation in her favor. But now she had nothing left to say, and I had never felt more alive. The final nail in her coffin. Lisa signing those divorce papers should have been the end of it. It should have been enough. But after everything she put me through, after the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, I realized something. I wasn't done yet. Lisa had spent months, maybe even years, building a perfect image for herself. Online, she was the loving wife. To our friends, she was the caring partner stuck in a broken marriage. She was always the victim, always deserving of sympathy. But now I had the truth. And the truth is a powerful thing. I didn't blast everything publicly. That would have been too easy, too predictable. Instead, I let the truth spread naturally. Heavy checkmark a few anonymous tips to people she worked with. Nothing too obvious, just enough to plant doubt in their minds. Heavy checkmark screenshots leaked to the right people. People love gossip, and Lisa had always been the center of attention. It didn't take much to flip the narrative against her. Heavy checkmark her affair partner? He found out that Lisa was no longer getting the financial payout she had promised. And just like that, he was gone too. Lisa went from being the woman who had it all to being completely alone. No husband, no boyfriend, no money, just karma catching up to her. Where she ended up. At first, Lisa tried to act like she was fine. She posted pictures, faked smiles, pretended she was starting fresh, like it was her choice. But little by little, cracks started to show. Heavy checkmark, she downgraded to a small apartment. Nothing fancy, nothing like the home she once lived in. Heavy checkmark, she started reaching out to old friends, trying to rebuild connections. But most of them had already chosen my side. Heavy checkmark, she tried to play the victim. But with everything that had come out, no one was buying it anymore. She had spent so much time trying to ruin me, so much effort crafting a perfect life out of lies, that she never stopped to think about what would happen if she failed. And she failed spectacularly. Taking Lisa down wasn't just about revenge. It wasn't just about making her suffer the way she had planned for me to suffer. It was about taking back my life. For too long, she had controlled everything. The narrative, the finances, the way people saw me. But now, she was nothing more than a memory. Heavy checkmark, I kept my business. Thrived, actually. With her out of the picture, I made smarter investments, built better partnerships, and grew it beyond anything I had imagined before. Heavy checkmark, I rebuilt my social circle. It turns out, when the manipulative liar is removed from the equation, people actually stick around. Heavy checkmark, I moved forward. Not out of bitterness, not out of spite, but because I had finally won. And Lisa? She was just another cautionary tale. Months passed. Life moved on. And then, one evening, I saw her again. I was sitting at a cafe, working on some emails, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. I didn't expect to see you here. I turned around, and there she was. Lisa looked different. Not bad, necessarily, but not like the woman I used to know. She looked tired, worn down, like someone who had spent months fighting against a reality she didn't want to accept. It's been a while, I said, keeping my voice even. She sat across from me without asking, a ghost of her old confidence flickering for a moment before disappearing. How have you been? She asked, forcing a smile. Great, I answered honestly. Her smile faltered. For a second, it looked like she wanted to say something else, like she wanted to bring up the past, maybe even ask for another chance. But she didn't, because deep down, she already knew what my answer would be. So instead, she just nodded, stood up, and walked away. And for the first time in years, as I watched her go, I felt absolutely nothing. Because she was already gone. Lisa thought she could destroy me. She thought she could control the narrative, manipulate the system, and walk away with everything. Instead, she walked away with nothing. And me? I was finally free.